quick one before we start. If you're sick of living off servo pies and guessing your way through meals on the run, this is going to help. It's Power B from Nature B. It is a full meal replacement shake. We live on it and we thrive on it. It's not a snack, it's actually a meal. And it's got grass-fed whey protein, probiotics for gut health, and it's the only shake in Australia with Nature B's Power Pollen built in. 2 shakes a day. It is that simple. If it doesn't work for you, Nature B gives you your money back, no questions asked. The intro pack's $39.95. There are links in the description. And like anything, it works best alongside regular exercise and a balanced diet. Now, let's get into the episode.
A big week in Sydney, so we're putting this one out early. Here's our chat with Barnaby Joyce on the protests, power bills, and the political shift happening right now.
Welcome to the Bonafide podcast with Luke Bonar. And he's not.
Here we go.
Done.
Hold your ears, folks.
Yeah.
It's showtime.
Barnaby Joyce, welcome to the Bonafide podcast, your first appearance on the Bonafide podcast. We've spoken before on 2GB and Triple M, but here you are.
Well, thank you very much for having me on your show and giving me the opportunity to say good day.
Well, it's great to have you here to say good day. And by the way, there's a bit of a connection. I just found out the millennial, my stepdaughter, who produces this, is friends with your daughter, Julia. And
well, Julia's a lot of life, so that's a good person to have as a friend because Julia's full of fun. Great lady.
Well, apparently she is, and I think they met, Kelsey, jump on if you want, but they met at the Tamworth Country Music Festival because they're both friends of the O'Connors. Does that make any sense to you?
Well, the Country Music Festival's a great place to meet a whole range of people, so that sounds like trouble from a long way off, but it's...
It was trouble, but it was a lot of fun.
Good luck to you.
Hey, listen, I'll tell you what, Barnaby, we might do a separate podcast one day about parenting. What, shall we do that? Raising young girls.
You mean living in a house with young girls while they raise themselves?
Shall we do that? Can we make that? Can we make that a separate podcast one day?
Yes, I think it will be very much scripted because the first person who's going to read it is your children, and they will have their own opinions of what you just said.
But that's okay. That's okay. In fact, we can get. You tell you what we could do. We could get Julia on one line, my millennial on the other, and you and I can sit back and just listen in, eh?
Yeah, their impressions of us would be a very dangerous thing, I imagine.
Ah, yes, but I don't know if we'd be shocked. But Barnaby Joyce, welcome to the Bonafide podcast. Great to have you here. Look, I guess the first, and you've answered this, but just for my listeners, leaving the Nationals and getting into One Nation could have been seen as, and they would say this in Yes Minister, a courageous political decision. But the people of New England love you. They love you. And so you could have said, look, I've done this. I've contributed. I've been leader of the Nationals. I've been deputy prime minister. I've been acting prime minister. And maybe it's time for me to give it away. But you didn't do that. You thought, I've got more fight left in me.
That's correct. It's an issue of what you can do, where you're most effective for both the people who elected you, the people of New England, and for your nation. You have both jobs. And look, I go over it over and over again, but I suppose you have to. My relationship with Mr. Littleproud had broken down. It was broken down to such a form there was no communication whatsoever. He'd asked for generational change, which to me, referring directly to me, which meant he wanted me to leave the National Party. And, of course, to back that in, they put you in a corner seat as far away from people as possible, tell you not to leave your electorate. That is, for your listeners, is a sign of a relationship that is dysfunctional. They're not working. I didn't believe I had nothing more to give. I did. And so over a long period of time, I had these discussions with Pauline Hanson on One Nation, and in a very deliberate and considered way, I made the move. And that move has been endorsed in the polling by the Australian people. And so, I'm back on the balls of my toes. I'm working hard, and I feel that I'm having effect and doing things that are working to move the political agenda, to change the debate in such a way as your listeners have a greater return for their investment in me.
Yeah, I get that, but you're in the House of Reps, and you need 76 seats in the House of Reps to govern, 76 plus one if you're very lucky. And Pauline Hanson has admitted that that's not going to happen. So you're kind of on your lonesome there. You got Cory Bernardi who said, "Yeah, I'll join you in the Senate," and I know he will. You can actually wield a lot of power if you control the Senate. Did you think about running for One Nation as a senator?
Yes. Well, at this point in time, this is the plan, to stand for New South Wales as a senator for New South Wales. Now, if in due course things change, well, then we'll deal with that. It's and what do you mean? What do I mean by that? If in discussions with the party they say, "Well, we'd prefer you to stand for a lower house seat," then I'll consider that.
You'd win New England. You would win New England again. I'm telling you now, and you know that.
Yeah, I think I would. Yeah, and that's, I could say, "Oh, I don't know," but you've got to be honest in these things, because people know if you're not telling the truth. And yeah, I think that would be the case. But that's not the plan at this stage. What I can say is absolutely the plan is, between now and then, I have a job to look after the people of New England, and I've got an office and myself that is focused on that. Obviously, I have a wider remit of duties now to do as well, and it just means I'm busier, and that's life. That's how it happens. And any person who's run a business or run a family knows at times you get busier and you've got to do more things.
Let me ask you this: what drives you? What do you think are the major issues facing Australians today?
Sure. One of the big issues, of course, is that we have a nation that is sliding. And I'll show you an example of that. Right now, you could turn on your television, see riots in the middle of Sydney, as people with every other flag but an Australian flag, and predominantly from Australia, do their very best to disturb the social harmony of what we've got, and to bring in outside issues into our domestic politics. Obviously, where the concern is there is reaction by the police in some instances will be questioned. But they're deliberately stirring things up. We had the massacre of people at a beach, and where people just murdered in a beach in the middle of Sydney. We have a housing crisis because we're bringing in people that we can't absorb. We just don't have the houses, the hospitals, the schools, the roads, the dams to absorb them. We have a continual intrusion into farmers' lives by more and more bureaucracy and basically the socialisation of private assets. We have a lack of vision in that we are not building up our nation's balance sheet so that with substantive assets such as ports, such as freight rail, such as coal-fired power stations, such as markets. We have a fascination with things we can't fix, such as climate change. I mean, there is no person in this building, I know it very well, I've been in this building for 20 years, no one in this building is going to change the climate, I can assure you of that. I mean, a lot of them couldn't change a tyre, let alone change the climate. And yet you have listeners of yours right now who can't afford their power bill. We've got small businesses and record insolvencies, going broken. Major manufacturers and major industries such as Tomago, aluminium smelter, our plastics industry, our urea industry, which has left our country. This has got to be put to a stop, and it needs it needs clarity, it needs unity, it needs strength. And I believe One Nation gives you clarity and unity and strength. Now, sometimes people find it, an abruptness, but we have to have a realistic look at exactly where we are and deal with what is happening where we are. Now, we are spending, for instance, hundreds of billions of dollars on climate policy. That money should be removed from climate policy and moved into substantive assets. Just do the realistic things, start building coal-fired power stations to get cheap power back to Australians. Cheap power puts downward pressure on the cost of living because it's an essential of everything you do, from your domestic requirements in your house to the cost of food that you buy to the prospects of the job you might have. And we've just got to have this epiphany, this turnaround. I know there's a heap of gripes in that, But you don't change parties because you think everything's going splendidly. You change parties because you think you have to find the policy structure that addresses the issues that quite clearly one party is aware of, and that was One Nation. And I think One Nation as a party itself has developed quite substantially from where it was maybe 20 years ago. Like all things, it morphs and flexes and changes, and develops in a form over a period of time. And One Nation's done that, and it's seen now, obviously, by the Australian people, if you reflect in the polling, as having credibility to deal with the issues that they see before them.
There's also a poll out in the Australian today, and you would have seen it. It's not long published, saying that One Nation would have received just 29% of preferences from coalition Greens and independent voters if an election was held last week. That would give One Nation little chance of winning a large number of seats, despite that amazing, immense, sharp increase in support.
Well, what if someone had said to you 2 years ago, well, One Nation will outpoll the coalition and be closing on Labor, you would say, no, that will never happen, but it did. And I think preference flows are also something that, as people get a more, full view of what One Nation represents, it may not, in some instances, be their first choice, but it'll be their second. I don't suspect there'll be many Green votes that will go for their second choice to One Nation. I would like that to be the case, but I doubt whether that will be the case. But I do believe there are a lot of votes coming across from the Labor Party, and I suspect that a lot of them will say, well, if I can't have the Labor Party, I'll go to One Nation, because we're seeing that in seats such as the Hunter and Blair and other areas round where, remember that the Labor Party vote's going down as well.
All right, let's talk real life for a second. Most of us don't fall off the wagon because we're lazy. It's because we're busy. Long days, weird hours, grabbing whatever's closest. That's where Power B comes in. It's a proper meal replacement. It's chocolate in flavour. God, it's delicious. It actually fills you up. And it's built with premium grass-fed whey protein, probiotics for digestion, vitamins, and Nature Bee's Power Pollen for energy and overall well-being. It's not about starving yourself or doing anything extreme. It's just 2 shakes a day to replace the meals that normally throw you off track. Simple, consistent, done. They've got an intro pack for $39.95, and it's backed by a 100% money-back guarantee. So you're not taking a gamble. There's no chance in this. If it doesn't work, they give you your money back. But it does work. Have a look at naturebee.com and always use it alongside a balanced diet and regular exercise.
And so there's a new political dynamic there.
So how do you feel about disenfranchised Conservative politicians, and indeed some disenfranchised Labor politicians now saying, well, listen, let's jump onto One Nation? We spoke to Pauline Hanson on this podcast last week, and she said she won't have a bar of it. However, Corey Bernardi looks like joining, and I'm sure he'll be successfully in South Australia. How do you feel about disenfranchised Conservative politicians now wanting to jump on board?
Well, you look at everything through the prism of what they offer, what their philosophies are, and what their desire is to contribute to the nation, and work within the guardrails of what One Nation has.
Because she really regrets, and I use this respectfully, but she really regrets getting into bed with Mark Latham, who, God, we could see that coming from a mile. Surely you could see that was not going to work from a long distance, couldn't you?
Well, they're strong personalities.
Yes,
and,
but you are. But you're a strong person.
I am, but I've worked in a federal realm with Pauline for a long period of time. Much. It's different. I'm not Mark Latham, and therefore the way I interact with other people is different. I've worked for a long time with deputies such as Fiona Nash and Bridget McKenzie, and I think they were effective and worthwhile and relationships for the purpose of politics, and we did good things. So I've got a track record of working, to be frank, with other people and working with respectable and competent ladies, women, and I've proven that, and I don't know whether that was the case with Mark.
Yeah. Well, look, it was a disaster, but I'm sure that you and Pauline are hoping that things will move forward. Look, you mentioned at the beginning of our chat, and I'm kind of hurrying here because you are on a deadline, and I respect that. But we now have here in Australia the Israeli President, Isaac Herzog. Now, the Greens have said that they don't believe he should have ever been allowed in the country. And then last night, we saw 27 people arrested. I've only seen selected footage that you see on the news. One policeman really hoeing into another guy who's standing there with his arms in the air, really punching into this bloke. What did you make of the protests yesterday in Sydney over Herzog's visit to Australia? Do you think that they were heavy-handed? What do you make of that?
Look, I think that what happens here is, yes, in some instances they appear they were. But I think we have to take into account that the protesters, they went out to inspire a response, and they got one. And, you know, it would have been better if they had obeyed the law and been peaceful. And if they'd obeyed the law and been peaceful, then we wouldn't have had the problems that we had. Now, it's a case of someone breaking into your house, and when you're very forceful in ejecting them and possibly go beyond what you should do, yes, it's your fault, but it's also the fault of the person who broke into the house. They shouldn't have been there, and they should have been abiding by the law to start off with. And the police, to be quite frank, in many instances are outnumbered, and they're dealing with people who are fundamentally and blatantly breaking the law in front of their face.
Also making headlines is that at a protest, this was earlier at Town Hall, you had the former Australian of the Year, Grace Tame, leading the protesters, and she was chanting, "Globalise the Intifada." What did you make of Grace Tame leading that chant?
Pretty disgraceful. First of all, she's not from the Middle East. I don't know what her connections are to that part of the world. She's inserted herself in a protest which culminated in people being assaulted. She is not doing what you would expect a former Australian of the Year should do, which is to promote harmony, not discord. So she's done that, and she has to reflect on that herself. We've seen a pattern of behaviour from Grace that says that we understand, you know, the trials of her life, but we are starting to see a pattern of behaviour of entitlement, of basically be rude, inspire discord, be the cheer squad for those working at complete odds with the peaceful and harmonious Australia that we all want. So, yeah, sort of getting over Grace a bit. I'm sort of sick of her.
One more thing, because you got to go. But as I said, we had Pauline Hanson on the podcast last week, and I just wanted your thoughts on immigration, because that's one of One Nation's policies. And I've got to ask you, because you did rip into immigrants who don't want to be here, immigrants who come here and
they
complain
do
about
want to be here.
But
they do want to be here. They just don't want to contribute to us.
Okay, but I've got to ask you, you said if they don't like it here, they should return to the shitholes they came from. Do you regret saying that? Do you regret saying that?
No, I don't. Not at all.
What did you mean by that?
Not at all. Well, if you arrive in Australia and try and change Australia into the country you left, and you obviously left it because you weren't happy there, and in some instances we're right on the back of a massacre of Australians, and we see the great benefit, the great blessing that father had in being allowed into this nation, and you know, the whole tenor of what he is doing. He is basically spitting in our face. So if people want to spit in our face, we've got to get to a point in time where we say, look, we've had enough. We've been tolerant. But we are going to put a mirror up to you and say, look at what this nation has offered you and look what you have done to us. And if that's what you want to do to us, you go back. And if you look to where many of the people who come to Australia are from, it is. It is a country where there's murder, where there's strife, where there's, in some instances, starvation, where there's no social security, where there's no hospitals, no schools. You arrive here and say, oh, well, I'm really unhappy. Well, go back to where you came from, because it is nothing like the blessing you have in this nation.
One more question, and I asked this of most of my guests. I'm just lightening things up a second here. What would Barnaby Joyce today, what advice would Barnaby Joyce today, if you could go back in a DeLorean in time, what advice would you give 16-year-old Barnaby Joyce?
Oh, gosh, it'd be a long conversation. They're in our lives, there are so many mistakes we make, don't we? And I'm no exception to that. But I would tell him to just treasure his experience with the people you love, because they're not with you forever. When you thought you were too busy to go speak to your grandparents, or, to go talk to your own parents, or just to, suck in the joy of life, I'll do it. I'd say you don't need to you really don't need to go to that party. You really don't need to try and go live in excesses. Just take it quieter. That's what I'd suggest to myself.
Gee, that's good advice, because I lost my dad quite some time ago, and I wish I'd said to him things I say to him because I talk to him every day. And same here.
And
I wish he was in the room with me. Barnaby Joyce, thank you. But let's talk again soon. You promise?
Okay, yes, absolutely. 100%. Talk to you soon.
So remember, if you want something easy that actually fits into a busy day, check out Power B from Nature B. Full meal replacement. Chocolate flavour, 2 shakes a day. The intro pack's only $39.95, and it comes with a 100% money-back guarantee, no questions asked. If you don't like it, the links are in the description. And like anything, it works best alongside regular exercise and a balanced diet.